And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on this lovely Tuesday evening. My name is Sean Phillips, and as always, I am joined alongside my two co-hosts, Mr. Andy Van Bever and Travis Kirkendall. We are the Voice of Reason podcast. Gentlemen, how are you two doing today?
Fan-freaking-tastic.
Doing good, doing good. I'm kind of excited to get into this topic.
I first of all, thanks everybody for the good, positive thoughts. We thought my niece had an accident last night. I'm not going to go in detail, but thank you everybody for the good, kind thoughts and the prayers and everything like that. Appreciate it greatly.
Yeah, thank God everything
Yeah.
was all right. I mean, it's one of those freak things that happen, it happens all the time. And thank God she's okay.
Yeah.
And
She.
we're here tonight.
Big time.
And
Yep.
yeah, thanks for the prayers, everybody.
Yep.
Andy appreciated it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So.
Oh wait, so gentlemen, besides some craziness that kind of happened yesterday, how was everybody's weekend? Did you guys do anything good throughout the week? What was new in your guys' neck of the woods?
Father's Day was spent at a water park, and I actually had a good time just sitting on the old inner tube floating around on the lazy river while the kids went down all the crazy slides and everything.
Hey, you can't beat that. You can't beat that at all.
Yeah.
Nice, nice. You got to relax on Father's Day. You're a father after all.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Or at least that's how it's supposed to be, right?
It is how it's supposed to be, but I saw the meme. Was it on Saturday? Somebody posted, "Fella, she can push the baby stroller, she can push the lawnmower. Go ahead and enjoy the day off."
Amen to that.
But what
Amen.
about your friend's video with the Mother's Day thing? How does this work for Father's Day?
I don't know.
We gotta ask him. We gotta ask him.
And I was hoping that he would. I was hoping that he would post. I was hoping he would post something, and I didn't see anything. And I was like, "Oh man, dude, come on! You gotta." I don't know. The last video he posted was something. They were at the shopping. He did a live at the Walmart while he was shopping, and I was like, "Okay, where's this going?" And of course, he didn't do anything. So I was.
Oh.
Well,
That's
all right. Sometimes
No.
sometimes you swing, sometimes you miss. That's part of playing the game.
Oh, I think
That's part of vlogging.
It's called balls in a vice, I believe is what it's called.
Yeah, that's another term for it.
Yeah.
How about you, Travis? Anything good happen on your end?
It was a good weekend. We went to the beach again. Beach, Lake Michigan. And then
Not the
what
Bruno
was it,
Beach.
I was
The
going to say
Bruno
the Bruno Beach.
No, we didn't go to the Bruno Beach this time. We kept it more conservative. But Sunday, Father's Day, we went to Longhorn Steakhouse with her dad. Had a good dinner with them, and pretty laid back weekend, man. Can't complain. What was it? Last night, or no, Sunday night, we had like a tornado come through here.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
South,
Where was that? Where was that in relationship to you at?
that was south suburbs. I'm on north side of the city.
Yeah, that was so that actually hit,
part
hit
wasn't.
2 blocks from my brother-in-law's place.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah, he lives.
Yeah,
he
like
lives
homes
down.
were-
He lives right between Naperville and Woodbridge. So
Yeah, and my our shop is actually in Woodridge, so thank God we didn't lose our shop. But
yeah,
it got pretty bad that night.
yeah. So that was I said that would have made for a lovely Father's Day gift right there. And
I was
said,
actually kind of hoping. I was hoping I'd wake up and like go to my car and to see it crushed by a tree, but it
insurance.
didn't happen.
Well, they
yeah,
said
it didn't
that
happen.
they said that was an F3. I was surprised.
Was it? I didn't know. It was that
I
bad.
just heard that today. They said for Chicago. I mean, for Chicagoland, that's highly unusual.
Yeah, they said they. 'Cause I'm not originally from here, but from what I heard, there's not usually as many tornadoes as we get back home. So that was interesting.
So, Sean, what did you do for the old Father's Day?
Well, for Father's Day, truthfully, we spent a lot of time relaxing. There's a pool here at our apartment, so we went up
Oh,
there
nice.
and spent some
Really
time,
nice.
did some grilling. Yeah, it was a really nice, relaxing day. It was a much our day that Saturday. I had kind of babysat at a bachelor party for the weekend for our good friend Matt Williams, who's getting married.
Oh, okay.
later this year,
Okay,
so-
that made sense. You had to explain that to me before I got the whole content of that discussion there. Babysitting.
Yeah.
I was
So
like,
no,
who were you babysitting?
no, it was a good time. Everyone seemed to have a lot of fun, and so it made for a pretty relaxing weekend this week. Just kind of working out, getting some exercise stuff and programs lined out. So nothing too crazy. Got a whole bunch of stuff going on at work. So better busy than bored, but definitely making it through. And today we've got some interesting things to talk about. One of the kind of big hot topics that we've seen lately. It's kind of been quiet for a little bit. Nothing too crazy has kind of come out of the political atmosphere recently. But we're now out of that election season. So of course, and now that we're kind of past the first 100 days of presidency, now people are kind of a little bit more quiet, although there's always going to be those bitches, gripes, concerns. But right now, the one that's kind of on the table is has to do with the filibuster. And some people aren't too happy about this. Andy, why don't you tell us all about it?
Sure. So what we're going to talk about first of all is what this all started over. And I want to read just a little bit of this. So this is over this discussion over ending the filibuster. Well, let me back up even further. For those of you who don't know, filibuster is a tool that has been in the Senate since its inception in 1789. The filibuster is a tactic that is used to make sure that the majority does not strong arm the minority. That if a bill is brought up that the minority doesn't like, or for that matter, the majority doesn't like, a filibuster is in effect talking a bill to death. And the object is to get enough senators to basically say, okay, if we'll agree to stop we'll agree to stop debating about this or stop talking about this, and if you'll just shut up. Or they'll do what's called the cloture rule, which takes 60 senators. It used to be 66, now it's 60 senators to basically vote for what's called cloture, which means while this person or persons is filibustering, they have an additional 30 minutes and then they'll go for the vote. Well, so that's being said now. Before the Senate right now, and this is, some of you may have heard of this, is called For the People Act, and this is the Democrats' voting rights bill. And so basically, I was wanting to get the details of this. What this bill is going to do is to it's going to it was that it would automatically register every American over the age of 18 to vote, establishes Election Day as a federal holiday, requires a minimum of 15 early voting days for federal elections, and places restrictions on gerrymandering, which is making districts go a certain way for a certain party. It also provides new laws for campaign finance, ethical rules for the president and the vice president. And so Joe Manchin, who is the sponsor of this bill, tried to get Republican support for this bill by saying that it would require people to provide an ID when they vote. Well, this was done to try to get the Republicans over to their side. And so the Republicans filibustered this bill. And their main argument was that this is a state thing. This is let the states make their rules for voting. Don't let it be a federal mandate. And when senators filibuster, it can be, I can say I'm going to filibuster for a while, and then I can yield the floor to my somebody from my party. I'll yield the floor to Travis, and then he can go for a while, or back and forth. The longest, and just for the record, the longest filibuster on record was done by Strom Thurmond over the 1968 Civil Rights Bill. The dude went 24 hours straight. Now, when you filibuster, you cannot walk around. You've got to stand by your desk, and you can talk about whatever you want to. When Strom Thurmond filibustered for 24 hours, he read the entire Washington, D.C. phone book. He read a cookbook. He talked about his grandkids, just all this stuff. The last, the last longest one that we had was over an Obama Supreme Court pick, and Rand Paul he and another senator went for 22 hours. Rand Paul actually read Green Eggs and Ham to his kids.
Yes, that was the one.
Yeah.
I was about to ask you, who was the one that
Yeah.
read Green Eggs and Ham
So
for it?
Rand Paul did that. That was 22 hours. Now, the longest filibuster ever was about 2 weeks. Now, that was passed off between, and if you're not speaking, you can leave the floor and go home if you want to. But the idea is that you're not, there's not going to be any vote, but you can, but that's just it. So what the Democrats wanted to do then, they have talked about this to where they want to eliminate the filibuster. They want to eliminate the filibuster because they say it's just a strong arm tactic that, that makes for, well, we just can't get our bill passed. And I want to say to those people, that's the idea. When you do a filibuster, think about this. So in the House, and let me just back up by saying, in the House, you're limited. A person is limited to one person cannot hold the floor for more than an hour unless they are yielded time by somebody else. Okay? So, but in the Senate, party on, man. You can go for as long as you want to. And so Joe Manchin, who is this guy, he's like, if we do this, we're going to, because the way it's supposed to work is, people from different parties are supposed to, he says this will discourage bipartisanship. This will discourage people from working together to get bills passed. And then this other one was, and I said her name a while ago, Christine Sinema from Arizona. She actually wrote an opinion article in the Washington Post today saying, she wants to keep the filibuster as it is, but she's open to, reforming how the Senate procedure is used. And Joe Biden, issued some kind of statement today. I don't know. I didn't hear it. I didn't want my daily entertainment, but I'm sorry. Bad, Andy. Bad. But, he said that he wanted the filibuster to, he believes, because he wanted the filibuster to remain in place. And if you know anything about history with Joe Biden was probably one of the best vice presidents that we've had, because as president of the Senate, because the vice president heads the Senate, and Joe Biden, when he was vice president under Obama, did a lot of things to get people to work together. So, but this was something that really spoke to me, because if you eliminate, and I'm kind of with this Christine Sinema from Arizona, if you eliminate the filibuster, what you're going to end up having is, okay, now, because technically it is 51-50 in the Senate right now, because the vice president breaks all the ties. And, all it takes is, okay, we're going to strong arm this through whether you like it or not, or we're going to strong arm it through the other way whether you like it or not. And I think it's a very big threat to democracy. So
100%. And I don't think people realize how important balance, terms like checks and balances and things like that is to our government and our democracy. Because, say you have, number one, I think the idea of one party having control of everything is terrible, whether you're Republican or Democrat.
Yep.
Because, for example, like I don't consider myself a Republican, but some of this policies that some of these Democrats are proposing right now actually scare the living crap out of me. And without a balance of the two, without things like the filibuster to kind of balance out some of these things is dangerous, because stuff can just start getting pushed through when they control a Senate and they control a House and they have the president, Democratic president in office. And it can go both ways too. It's very, I don't know. It's interesting that because has this ever come up before? Have they tried to get rid of the filibuster before? Is this a new thing?
I think it's a new thing. I don't know of it. I really don't know of it ever being. I never remember anybody. The Senate is historically. I mean, when I teach this in government, the Senate is historically proud of their tradition of filibuster to, that they don't have to rush through things, that they can take their sweet time and they can go through and do whatever they need to do. And to push this filibuster, I mean,
It's just there's so much change. Like there's been such a call for change on so much, especially in our government. Like just because how long is Andy? You know the answer to this. What has the filibuster always been a thing since
yes.
our government was
Yes.
started? Okay.
Yes.
I think people need to understand.
The last change was made in 1975 when they went from 66 senators down to 60 senators to make a cloture rule. That's the last change that I'm aware. Now there may don't hold me to it, but that was the last, and that was considered to be a revolutionary change because it used to be you had to have 2/3. You had to have 2/3 to have a cloture rule to shut down filibuster. But now it's not. It isn't that anymore. So
And maybe this. I guess this is a constitutionalist ideology I'm about to say, but I think people need to realize our founding fathers were very smart in how they made this constitution, and they made these things for very specific reasons due to things that they saw the reason we became our own country to begin with. And unfortunately, time and change, I don't know what it was, but I think we need to be very careful in what we actually change. Now, there's some things, sure, you can have amendments and stuff that come over time, but like, I don't know. This is something I think is, quite frankly, kind of scary, in my opinion, because like you said, we need that balance.
Because if
our government doesn't work without it.
Well, you're bordering, and I may be using this term strongly. I mean, you're bordering on political tyranny. I mean,
no, I don't think that's strong at all. I think that's
because
realistic.
because and you made a great point right then, Travis, is just saying, remember our history and where we came from. We came from the idea of no taxation without representation. Okay, whether the Democrats want to admit it or not, they do not represent everybody.
No,
I mean,
Republicans don't either,
and Republicans don't either. No. We saw in the last election that we're pretty much, to tell you the truth, we're about 40-40-20 is where we're at. They think it's 50-50. It's not 50-50. No. When you look at the raw numbers, not the electoral college, not the Senate, when you break down the raw numbers, it's not 50-50. Not even close. And I mean, it may be 50-30-20, but it's not 50-50 or, and this is why, I mean, people think I'm strange, but this is why I'm attracted to the libertarian style of government. The libertarians they have a very, and I'll throw out a historical term that probably will confuse everybody, but they have a very federalist view. They want a balance of power that favors the states. It is a balance of power between the states and the federal government, but it's more, let the states do their thing. They can manage their business on a local level. Don't, let's not make this about us. It's about the people.
Yeah. So here's a question for you guys. And where do you think the issue stems from? So when I hear a lot of individuals talk, and mostly this is when I kind of start to see, some of the real big individuals that believe in like socialism or socialist ideas. But a lot of times when I hear some of these chirpings, it kind of blows my mind that a lot of these people want the narrative kind of shifted to where, like, just because one part of the country is one way, the rest of the entire nation also needs to be that way. And I truthfully don't understand that. There are certain basic human rights things that I think pretty much everyone can agree on at this point, that yeah, it everyone should have a fair shake right across the board. However, there's just so many things that it's like, so take in for example, and I always go back to like when we had Samwise on the show, and he explained things a little bit better for me when it came to the Georgia voting laws and just kind of how certain things are more difficult for certain individuals. And I always hate being the person to bring up the argument, well, if you don't like it, just move, because not everyone can just move overnight, and that's not exactly how all these things work. However, it really does blow my mind, at least, how people in California think that, or not just California, I'm just going to use that as an example because they seem to be the loudest voice, right?
Yeah.
Seem to think that the way that they live is how people in Delaware need to live, and how things need to be. And it's just like, truthfully, if you look at like the state of certain cities in that state, why would you want that? Why would you want that at all? And look at the boom of places like Austin. Like, I actually feel bad for people that have lived in Austin for a long time, seen the like explosion of growth in their city from Californians that are like rushing in there. I actually heard a song, and it's from like a local Austin artist, and it's like this kind of country hip hop song. It's actually kind of amusing, but it's essentially this person from artist that's talking about all the changes that have happened in the city of Austin in the last year and a half alone, and how frustrating he's like, just talking about, he's like, I don't need all your stupid coffee shops, your you're like all these different things. He's like, leave that shit in California. Like, we don't need Silicon Valley right here again. Like, you guys left it, and you're bringing it all right here.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
It blows my mind, and I don't know if it comes to. I mean, I'd like to get your guys' thoughts. Whether you think it's lack of education, whether it's lack of understanding, but why do you think that so many people, it seems about, you're right, probably 40, maybe 45, 50% of the nation don't believe in the power of the states? I mean, that is such an important thing. I believe that the federal government should have some things and some say, but why wouldn't you want to rely, or why is there not a bigger focus put towards the power of the state?
There's
Go ahead.
I don't even know how to. I really don't know how to tackle this. I think because this is a cultural shift, I believe, and it's a change in mindset in our country. I mean, Americans do not have the same mentality that we had 50 years ago, for better or worse. Some things better, some worse, and this is one of those things that I do think is worse because, we talked earlier about the balance between, the libertarian point of view of balance between the state and the federal government, giving more power to the state, but federal government stepping in when necessary, not all the time. And if you don't give the state their say in their state, and everything is at the federal level, I think you do begin to have, what's the term you used earlier, Andy, of political tyranny, or like I think that you start to get like a regime, essentially, when you have one focus of power.
That's a dangerous way of putting it too, but go ahead. Yeah.
I don't know. It's such a, I think, I'm going to go back to a quote. Maybe it applies, maybe it doesn't. The JFK quote, ask not what you can do or what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. And I don't think that applies today. I think it's complete opposite now. Now it's like, well, what can the government do for me? And people are now looking for the federal government to do things instead of the state government. And I think we're seeing more of an overreach now than ever before. And again, I think this is another reason why the filibuster is one of the many things that are so important in keeping that balance. But I don't know if it is a lack, and maybe it's a lack of education too. I mean, I think I told Andy the other day, there was a kid in my class that literally was asking me if Africa was a country. And then he didn't know that. He asked us, like, so is UK a country or a continent? And he asked the same about Russia. This kid just graduated high school last year. And he legitimately did not know the answers to these questions. He was asking me. So maybe it's a lack of, education, or I don't know. Andy, you want to tackle this?
Well, you brought
A
up
lot.
two good points there. I want to adjust. So let's talk about how much control how much control has been given to states, and I don't think we do realize this though. I know what we said earlier, but I also want to reflect on something else. So in the election of 2000, Al Gore versus George W. Bush. There was, and I was trying to find the exact quote, but I remember it was an MTV, and I was watching it. I actually recorded it for our kids to watch in government class. But MTV does the Rock the Vote thing, and this kid asked Al Gore, "Don't you think instead of going in, and Sean, you'll love this, but he said instead of going into a deeper deficit, why not legalize marijuana and tax the bleep out of it?" Is what it came out. Mm-hmm. And Al Gore at that time said, I do not foresee in the near future pot being legalized anywhere for that purpose. Okay, 21 years later, here we are, and I don't know what the stats are for, but I think there was a part where, and when it was challenged, Colorado, correct me if I'm wrong, Colorado was the first state to legalize, right?
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So, and then that was challenged, and when the Supreme Court said, that's Colorado's thing, let them do it. So now you have the door open up. But there has to be, I think, we have a federal government, and the term federalism, basically literally means a balance of power. Okay? Because there are exclusive rights for the state, there are exclusive rights. Obviously states can't declare war. Okay? Mm-hmm. But there are those, but the states can set their speed limits. They can legalize pot. They can legalize gambling. There's some states still in 2021 that don't have a lottery. Yeah. And so it's up to the states to decide what's right and what's wrong for their people. Because, and I think it was you that said earlier, Sean, what works in California doesn't always work here in Missouri, or doesn't work in Illinois, or doesn't work in Iowa. But and here's the thing, and I forgot it was a country song. This is why I don't listen to country, but it was actually a good song. This guy, and it was something about flyover country. They referred to all the countries between, or all the states between New York and Los Angeles, flyover country. Nobody cares about the flyover country. It's all about where the population's at. Well, mm-hmm. Here's the thing, and here's another concept. It's a governmental concept. It's called majority rule, minority rights. Okay, the majority rules, but you have to remember minority rights. And I'm not talking about, every time we say minority rights, we're not always talking about African Americans, LGBTQ, or anything else. Right now, majority rules. Who's ruling? Well, you have a Democratic president, you have a Democratic House, you have a split Senate. So in theory, majority rules, Democrats are ruling. And we saw the same thing happen in the first 2 years of Trump's presidency. We said, screw you. They said, screw you, Democrats. We're going to do things. We're going to build this wall. We're going to give tax breaks to the big industries. And then what happens after the Democrats come into power? Role reversal. Screw you, Republicans. We're going to do all this stuff. And who's caught in between all this? It's the states. If Missouri had their way, Missouri would say, hey, we're cool. Just let us do our thing. That's one of the reasons why I love teaching in Missouri. All the stuff that's coming down the pike about this, that, and the other, about, well, you need to do that. Missouri, the DESE is pretty good about letting local entities, as long as we meet our standards, they don't care. The end justifies the means. I know it's kind of rude to say that, but when you give the federal government so much power that the states don't have a voice, man, that's
dangerous waters.
Yeah, it is.
And I don't know. Hopefully, I don't know. I hope this is not something that's going to keep. I hope this isn't a snowball effect. You
I
know,
don't either. I don't either.
and I don't think people want it to be a snowball effect. If you do, you need to educate yourself.
And that's the other. Oh, that was the second thing. I'm sorry, I totally lost my train of thought there. But yeah, the lack of common sense and education. You know, how many? How many is Europe? I still have kids who think that Europe's a country. If I say name the 7 continents, so we do this. I do that, and I've posted it. I know. I don't know who. I don't know if anybody does Snapchat, but I do this often on Snapchat. I do what's called the 50 state challenge. I give them 5 minutes. Name all 50. Write all 50 states down on the board. I've had one in the last 3 years that I've been doing this challenge. I've had one student who has done it. One, and I bet you I've given this challenge out 35, 40 times. And
Dang.
what's really sad is when I have some kids who only get like 25, 30 states, and you're going,
Yeah. Well, if you gave him 10 minutes instead of 5.
even then, I'd be, or if I tell, I'm thinking about, I thought about doing this. Name as many countries as you can in 5 minutes. You want to talk about something that would probably, name
Africa.
Name. If somebody says, "Okay, do you know where Sierra Leone is at?" I'll ask you. Do you guys know where Sierra Leone is at?
What country is that? That's
Thanks to Jay-Z and Kanye.
Yeah, that's an African. That's an African nation. Okay.
Yes.
Qatar or Qatar, however you want to say.
Yeah.
That's Middle East. That's technically it's an Asian country. Okay, so it is a, it's. But if I ask a kid, hey, where, the one that gets the most laughs is when I say, can you tell me where Djibouti is at? Djibouti, but it's again African nation. It's about the size of, Northeast Missouri, but it's still a nation. It's
See, isn't that, and that's what's so wild to me is, I mean, even like being in Poland, for example, like we drove across Poland in a matter of hours.
Yeah.
And that's a whole country.
Yep.
And then it's a 2-day trek, by vehicle essentially to cross the United States, sometimes 3. There's a mass difference in some of the sizes of like what is a nation. Like, are we too big?
Right.
The Louisiana Purchase screw us,
Well,
and it's just because it's just the mass difference of, like, again, like I said, there are some people in some parts of the United States that they don't and never will kind of see what the grass is like in another part of the country.
Right.
But because it's one way for them, their core belief is that it should be that way for everybody. And that's just, we are too large, too diverse, which we should be proud of the diversity that we have. But literally, this is an issue where it's almost like there's too much ground to cover. I mean, we have two nations. One's damn near closer to Russia than it is to the rest of the nation, more attached to Canada than is the rest of us. And then we've got another that's completely just floating off right there in the middle of the ocean. And I mean, so, and that one, you could arguably say we decided to just kind of.
Well, we screwed them. We screwed them.
Yeah.
Who was it that was who was it that told me? Somebody had told me. I think I don't know. It was somebody who served since I've been at Clopton who served in Hawaii. And
I think it was Marine, right?
Yeah, it was a Marine.
Michael Yates?
Yeah.
I think it was Michael Yates.
He was over there.
Michael Yates. Yeah, it was. Michael Yates told me. He said, if you talk to a native Hawaiian, they will not call themselves Americans.
Nope.
They call themselves Hawaiians or Islanders, Pacific Islanders. They will not call themselves Americans. They refuse to call themselves Americans. So
it's a similar mindset with the natives in Alaska too.
yeah, the Inuit.
I believe that.
Yeah, the Inuit. I was going to ask you about that too, Travis. I mean, you spent,
Very similar.
Yeah,
very similar.
And again, we that was the other thing. We bought Alaska from Russia, and that was in Oh, 1850s. William Seward was the Secretary of State.
Seward's Icebox.
Seward's Icebox. We bought that entire state for $7.1 million. Now, granted, that was in like 1852 money, but when you think when you could sit when you said Alaska inside the continental United States.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
It's
ridiculous.
You still have some room left over from Minnesota down to the tip of Texas, And so, and that's again the lack of education, that kids don't know about this stuff, and these kids grow into voting citizens who become even more uneducated, who become even more ignorant.
And you know what scares me is, and maybe this is pure speculation, but I speculate that that's by design.
Explain yourself on that one.
Speculation. If people are uninformed, they make uninformed decisions.
Okay.
Based off of narratives and whatever the government wants you to believe, versus people not truly educating themselves on what this filibuster thing actually is, versus just reading like a CNN article or something and saying, "Oh, well, screw the Republicans," or I don't know. It's
I'll agree with that 100%.
I think it's the same reason we don't teach people about money.
Well, that's literally what I was going to add on is it's not Common Core to know how to balance a checkbook, or to know how to like get yourself out of debt, or to how to stay out of debt. We're preached down on geometry, all that shit, but then you have, we like we've talked about before, we set 18-year-olds into the world willingly just signing off on $40,000-$50,000 worth of student loan debt. And then for not even 4 years, for about 18 years of most young people's lives, they're pushed the narrative that if you do not go to college, you will fail as an adult. That's like a real narrative. I mean, and we talked about that, like last week, is it's kind of pushed on that narrative of without college, you will be unsuccessful. Or like the level of success is there's a ceiling to the level of success that you could obtain. And when you look at things like why would we not make it more Common Core on understanding how to make sure you're not paying too much in interest, to make sure you're not, signing deals on a car that's 18-20% interest, like for a vehicle, and people do that kind of stuff all the time, uninformed. Like, why is it literally not taught in schools? Don't go to payday loan centers. Why? Because there's an advantage to some. There's an advantage. There's people who capitalize. The government capitalizes off federal student. That's a thing that people don't understand. Federal government student regulated loans. Okay, the government literally controls what kind of loans, and they're happy to give them out because they know that they've got you roped in for interest for a long periods of time.
And I think this is just a perfect example of the many things that just shows the lack of awareness. And I don't think it's really a surprise as to why we're where we're at as a society and as a nation. I really don't. If you really break down what the things we talk about, it all kind of starts to make sense, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was sorry, guys. I had your dad just said that his sound quality was dropping off, Sean, so I had to make some adjustments there.
Oh no, you're good. Well, and that might be me too, just bouncing far away from the mic. But also, Travis and I, and from firsthand, we can say that we've seen exactly how it can negatively affect individuals that are kind of, just normal individuals. Like we're in potential, and we didn't even get our hopes up too high, but we're in potential. We're looking at getting a building for our business. However, just based off of how the government wants to, or the bank wants to do dealings with business loans, is a lot different. They're a lot more willing to shell out loans for homes, for student loans, but businesses, it's a lot harder unless you're already one of these, super established businesses that already has a lot of either capital, which I, would understand.
Yeah, right.
But they make it really, really hard for the little guy to become a big guy.
Well, and I think that is, I don't want to say white privilege. I just want to say privilege to, again, feeding into that narrative of, okay, what are we really wanting to push in this country? Are we, because in an economist's eyes, borrowing more money stimulates the economy. I hate to say it like that.
It's true though.
But it's true, and I mean, that's why. How long, Travis, have we been below 3% now for an interest rate?
Oh God, it's been a while, which it's starting to go back up.
Well, I mean,
inflation.
My new home loan that I got it at. I was kind of bummed because I couldn't get the loan fast enough. I mean, I think I got mine at 3.2, which is phenomenal. Because when I bought this house at 6.5%. Which back then in 2004 when I bought this house, that was a phenomenal rate. And when I know some guys who bought houses in the ones, and that set off this housing boom that, like I said, has got to stop. Has got to sometime.
What comes up must come down, but it's a cycle. It's a cycle.
Yeah.
So, educate yourself, kids. Do it.
Yeah.
Always. And speaking of what goes up must comes down, I'm gonna roll into a little bit of our next topic, and we are gonna take a big old deep breath.
This is not a Viagra plug-in by any means. We're not.
That's
showing
what
off
you
Viagra.
I am happy to announce our newest sponsor of the Voice of Reason podcast, Viagra. No, I wish that I would actually. I would take it. I would take it for sure. No, so what I want to talk about, and again, we're going to do a little bit of a shift. We're not going to talk so much political, anything like that, but we are going to talk about something that's not quite as scary as politics, and that's the wonderful world of Poltergeist, and a very specific one that I want to talk about. And the only reason why I'm doing this one in particular is because of a recent movie that came out, which was The Conjuring 3. For those that don't know, The Conjuring is a scary movie series. It's a multiverse. So yeah, there's literally, I think, 8 different films in the franchise now that all tie into the same story overall. But it started with The Conjuring 1, went on to The Conjuring 2, which we're going to talk a little bit. We're going to talk about that story today. And the latest one, The Conjuring 3, I spoke a little bit last week, I think, was the story of an individual by the name of Arnie Johnson, who was one of, not the first, but one of a few amount of people who actually, while in court, while being charged with first-degree murder, his defense was he claimed demonic possession, and believe it or not, we would technically call it a victory for the case, as he was only charged with manslaughter, sentenced to 15 years in prison, and paroled after 5 years. Whoa. Yes. So I kid you not. Yes, his defense was demonic possession. Claims of demonic possession is what caused him, and it's a very interesting story. The gal that he was actually dating at the time. He actually ended up marrying in jail. When he was released from jail, they had kids, and they actually still live happily to this day.
So this is within how many years has this been?
I want to say the Arnie Johnson case would have been in. Let's find out. That was it is recent. I think he 1981. Wow. 1981 in November. Yeah, so pretty recent as far as the times go. And the case that we are going to be talking about is one of the most documented poltergeist cases in all time. And so I'm a big ghost / paranormal guy. I love talking about this kind of stuff. If you guys have listened to the podcast, you definitely kind of have got that vibe from now. But the reason why I want to talk about the Enfield poltergeist so specifically is because this is one of the most well-documented cases in history, okay? And this is not just coming from like old text or books of cases that might have happened in the 1800s, 1700s. There are audio, video, literally thousands of hours of recordings that went into the Enfield poltergeist case. So how does it tie in with The Conjuring 2? So, first and foremost, I would like to put it on the record. The Conjuring series follows two quote unquote paranormal investigators, or one's a medium, named Ed and Lorraine Warren. Okay. Ed and Lorraine Warren had absolutely nothing to do with the Enfield poltergeist case. However, The Conjuring 2 is based off the fact that they were essentially there the whole time. The real story, the one that Hollywood doesn't put out and that is not, not as glamorous, is Ed and Lorraine Warren were there in Enfield, in London, for one day. One day. Not a whole movie's worth, but one day. And not only that, they showed up uninvited. They literally bursted into the scene because, regardless, for better or worse, whether or not Lorraine Warren had psychic powers, whatever you want to call them, her husband was definitely a media whore who definitely tried to push this narrative that they were always involved and always knew everything. That was not the case. So let's get into the Enfield poltergeist case. Now, this was a claim of supernatural activity at 284 Green Street, a council, which would be this was low-income housing, okay? These were individuals that lived in poverty. Enfield, London. Here's the thing. This happened between 1977 and 1979. This was not a quick case. This is like I said, the most well-documented poltergeist case in history. So one of the two big individuals that did the research on this case are a guy named Maurice Grosse and writer Guy Playfair. So these individuals spent over, a year, a lot of time doing the research on this home. Now, I'm also going to quickly talk, if you literally Google the Enfield poltergeist case, a lot of stuff that will actually pop up is a lot of people talk about how it was a hoax. Now, it is on record, the Guy Playfair and Maurice Grosse literally talked about how there were certain things that happened along the way that one of the girls, we'll get into her name, her here in a little bit, did fake. Now, according to them, there were actually reasons why this was done. Now, whether or not you believe any of it that happened is completely up to you guys. I'll give you guys some of the facts, some of the things that happened, and I will let you guys determine what your thoughts are on whether or not it was real. So, August 1977, single parent Peggy Hodgson called police to her rented home in Enfield, claiming she had witnessed furniture moving and that two of her 4 children had said knocking sounds were heard on the walls. There was a girl named Margaret, age 13, and the most important one of the story is going to be Janet Hodgson. She was the one we'll talk about here in a little bit that was the most affected by this poltergeist. Now, what's very interesting is right off the bat, at the very beginning of this, police constable showed up to the house to see what was going on. A police officer wrote down on record and then was humiliated and ridiculed after this. On record, a police officer claimed that she had seen a wooden chair float several inches off of the ground and move across the room over 4 feet. Not like one of the people saying this, but in actual police documented records, it said this constable wrote this, that it actually happened. And this was just one of the big starts of this. Now, why I find this this particular story again so interesting. I can't pull up any of it, and a lot of the audio, there is some that you can find on YouTube. But I encourage you guys, if you guys just type in Enfield poltergeist, actual recording, something like that, you guys can find all the footage on YouTube. There's plenty of it there. Now, Janet, age 11. So Janet was not a trained ventriloquist. She was not an individual that had really any kind of special talents. This was a super poor family. One of the other most important parts that I can lay claim that for some people that said that why this is not a hoax was that Peggy Hodgson, the woman that lived there, a single mother, never wanted to leave this home. This was never about money. Okay. One of the big things is that Maurice Grosse, Guy Playfair, and Peggy Hodgson never asked for money while all of this was happening. None of them asked for any kind of funding to do any kind of research. None of them, they never asked to leave. So, right before everything started happening, when the family had moved in, they were given a bunch of furniture, right? A bunch of utilities and utensils, furniture and stuff from the end of families that had experienced a murder, right? And they put all this stuff in their home.
Okay.
Also, another thing that was in there was, and The Conjuring 2 makes a big point to push. There was a chair that was left in this home. Now, during all of this stuff, the individual Janet, while at age 11, mind you, and I encourage you guys when we're done listening to the podcast to look up the Janet Hodgson actual recordings from this. Okay, this is a very big part of it. This girl was 11 years old and claimed that an individual, a spirit by the name of Bill, was controlling her body and would speak through her. Now, if you listen to some of these recordings, I'm going to try like my best to mock it. But when I say you would hear a voice like this, mind you, I'm coughing. I can't do that for very long. That same very similar voice is coming from an 11-year-old girl. But here's the thing. This wasn't like she could sit there and do that all day. Like I just did that, literally coughed. It hurt. My voice is raspy now. She would do it for hours upon end, literally days at a time, and have zero issues with her speaking, claiming that this was the individual. They brought ventriloquist in. They brought in all kinds of, they literally had voice scans done on this little girl that proved when you guys talk, if you literally put your hand right here, you could feel the vibrations in the front of your throat. When these voices were coming from Janet, they were not coming from her throat. They were coming from inside of her diaphragm.
Wow.
Literally, like very interesting things, quite literally impossible. And I do apologize. My stuff's going to be very scattered while talking about this.
No, this is very good. I'm enjoying this.
One of the other very interesting things, there is another recording that Guy Playfair and Maurice Grosse did where they're literally talking to the spirit. And again, this one's on YouTube. You can listen to the full clip. They are, and I encourage you to listen with headphones because you will actually hear a difference in the knock. So they're literally communicating with a spirit, which, they claim is not necessarily the best idea to do. But this is while all members of the family are inside. In this room, there was not other people in the house, and that's whether or not I guess you would kind of just have to take a word for the investigators, all the other individuals that were actually there doing the investigation. They are literally asking the spirit if it's a male spirit, and they're told to knock once for yes, twice for no, and you can literally hear knocks from different areas, and as they're talking, and this is not like it's coming from one of the girls or one of the other family members, because they're right there in front of them. And these, you'll hear a knock from one end of the wall to another side of the house, to another side of the house. You hear these knocks answering these questions. But what's very interesting is when they get to the end, he asked the spirit, he's like, are you mad about something? And the spirit says, no. And he says, are you having a game with me? And quite literally, you can hear it in the recording. There's a cardboard box that's sitting on the table across the room. You literally hear coming down, and it throws itself at Maurice Grosse while he's conducting this interview. Flies off the table, and you can hear it clear as day. It literally passes by the microphone. It's one of the most interesting things that I've actually heard, like while listening to what one would consider a case like this. There's not a whole lot of proof in the pudding with a lot of these things. There was also the case of the levitating by Janet Hodgson. Again, an 11-year-old girl who passerbyers outside of the house. There was two girls that were walking by who literally, again, on record said that they had actually seen Janet floating up and down in her bedroom as they were looking from a window. But here's the thing. The big claim to it was she wasn't like vertically. It wasn't like she was jumping. She was completely horizontal.
Wow.
And going up and down. Yeah. Another instance of a quote unquote eyewitness, a third party one, was I believe it was a trash man that was actually passing by the house. So one of the things that the spirit claimed when it was communicating through Janet, it claimed that it could move objects either through walls or the ceilings. At one point, again, Guy and Maurice were asking the spirit if they could move things to the wall, and allegedly, and again, this just goes, it's whether or not you believe the instance or whether or not you believe, anything that the family said. But a book was allegedly moved. Janet was locked into a room with a book, and then said that she had moved it through. The individuals checked the other room, and the book was allegedly in the room. But what's very interesting was there was an eyewitness outside where they asked if she could do it with a bigger object. So they gave her a big red cushion, kind of that would like sit on patio furniture. They gave her a big red cushion, and without any windows being open, without anything like that at all, a passerby said that he was looking at the roof, and all of a sudden he literally saw a red, the red cushion just appeared on top of the roof as he was like looking at the house while everything was going by. Now, was he maybe just tweaking, smoking crack? We don't know. But what they do know is that they know that the window wasn't open. So there's a couple just, I don't know, little weird things like that it's kind of like, you really kind of got to base it off what you believe, whether or not like things like that are possible, whether or not you believe Maurice Gross or Guy Playfair. The sisters, but if you, did we lose me? Oh, okay.
You're good now.
Did you guys lose me for a second?
Yes, we did, but it's okay.
Janet Hodgson is very much alive, and you can literally look up interviews of this woman, and you can tell like she's had it rough. Definitely what had happened, and again, even after all this time, still sticks with the story. One of the most important things I think about all of this is a thing to consider, and there's a lot of other things like I could talk about. This is, like I said, a very well documented case, and it would have to be like 2 episodes worth of stuff and really laid out there. But to put it in perspective, those were like some of the big things that I really kind of wanted to hit on. But and again, I encourage you, don't watch The Conjuring 2, but there is a really good documentary about the Enfield poltergeist that's literally just called The Enfield Haunting, that you can watch, that goes into a lot of good detail. There's another podcast you can listen to called Last Podcast on the Left that they quite literally do a two-part or 2-hour a piece podcast about it that is like insane. It's got a bunch of good info. But one of the big things is, of all the stuff that happened right underneath the nose, and there is one more thing I will talk about because it's actually rather amusing. But of all the things, if this was a hoax, this was an 11-year-old girl that for almost 2 years had multiple adults tricked, literal police officers fooled. Because here's the thing, there were cases where literally marbles would fall from the ceiling, not like from a stairwell, but they would just, the individuals be talking like while they're sitting in the living room, and then a marble would fall. But here's the thing, they tried to recreate this literally thousands of times, documented it on film and audio. When the marble would drop, it would not roll, it would not move, it would not bounce, it would just drop. Now, whenever they tried that, they could never replicate it. Mm-hmm. But I'll talk one more. It's rather kind of amusing. So, an American magician was brought in to determine whether or not this was a hoax or whether it was real. But here's the thing: the magician was clearly instructed from the get go by Guy Playfair and Maurice Grosse, do not tell the family you are a magician. We just want them to think that you're another investigator that's coming in to do research. But literally within, like they say, the first hour of him being there, he started doing card tricks in front of these kids. So it literally just goes to show that magicians are
Idiots.
kind of stupid. Um, but what was so funny about it was the magician tried to see if he could catch Janet in the act of doing, one of these, things, seeing if it was actually her. So that evening, normally she slept in the same bedroom with her sister Margaret. That evening, she was asleep in a room by herself. And they literally did one of those whole, like, all right, we're going to bed thing, and fake walked down the stairs. And literally the magician sat there at the stairwell and there was a tape recorder, mind you. This is why this is so funny, because it is on recording. So after Guy Playfair, Maurice Grossman, they go downstairs for the evening. Janet had come out into the hallway. Now, whether it was to go get a drink of water, whatever it might have been, the magician was just sitting on the stairs waiting for her. Now, the magician went on to claim that Janet saw him and ran off. Him saying, and his excuse was, she saw me, she was going to try doing something, but once she saw me, she went back into her room. Hence why nothing happened. However, the audio recordings showed just kind of how dumb this American magician was, because this little girl comes out of this room, sees him, and tries telling him, but she has a very British Cockney accent of, she tries saying, I don't like being alone in there. And that came off as, I don't like being alone in there. And he couldn't understand what she was saying. So he kept trying to say, like, yeah, weather out here is really fair. Like, and she's like, no, I don't like being alone in there. Tries 4 times. So instead, this is an adult male talking to an 11-year-old girl. Instead of trying to figure out what she's trying to say or get one of the other adults, he literally pulls out flash powder out of his pocket and does that whole thing to just end the conversation, and she runs back into her room. But the funny thing is, mind you, it's all on recording. You can hear it. You hear the pops coming from the smoke and the flame and all that shit. But the funny thing is, people that like deny the Enfield poltergeist, like, take his testimony as like truth as to why it was a hoax. Because if the magician said that it was a hoax, then it had to be a hoax, kind of thing.
This is where I'm at with paranormal, and I get criticized for this. I believe it because, number one, there was a show that Sci-Fi Channel ran for 4 or 5 years called Ghost Hunters, and to me, it was it was a pretty decent show until they got, so big in their head. But they went to some of the they went to what's the name of that place in St. Louis? The mansion,
Limp Brewery.
Yeah, Limp Mansion. And they said, and when they did the Limp Mansion, they said that was one of their best episodes. And I know the Dave Glover show, which is out of radio show out of St. Louis, have done, and they try to be as open minded as they can, and just seeing this stuff happen. And this isn't people. Hey, you folk, you evangelicals. Hey, guess what? It's in the Bible. Demon possession is in the Bible, and it is something that's real. We're even told that there's cosmic battles going on that we don't see, and I've never experienced anything personally, but I geek out whenever they have these, and I've watched various shows. Ghost Hunters was the main one I watched. Travel Channel had one that they tried to, it's all spooked out and everything like that. But there's another one, and I've never heard of this infield poltergeist. There's a one in an old sanatorium in Kentucky called the Waverly Hills Sanatorium, and it and I've watched multiple different shows. Whenever I see it in the program description of Waverly Hills I watch it. I mean, I'll record it, whatever. That place is messed up because of it was I believe it was a tuberculosis ward back in the early 1900s, late 1800s, and the number of people who died there, and just it is, it's considered to be one of the most haunted places in America. And I've watched multiple, and I mean it's just stuff you can't explain away. You're like, how, I don't know, where are you at on this, Travis?
I think people are so easily dismissive of things that they've never seen or experienced firsthand. And I personally have not either seen nor experienced anything paranormal. However, there's so many accounts and there's so many things out there of people who have seen or experienced these things. And it's not just here. I mean, this is a worldwide thing. And there's accounts of this stuff throughout history. I mean, that it's hard for me to totally dismiss it because there's so much evidence. There's so many other experiences that others had. So I can't necessarily dismiss it, maybe because I'm open-minded, but I've never experienced it. I've never seen anything like it. If I had, man, I really think that'd be a life-changing experience. I don't know how it couldn't be. Sean, do you have any legitimate experiences with this?
Yes,
like, have you
I have,
seen
I
things?
have.
I mean, I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting. It's really, really crazy.
There's one in particular instance that I can recount, and I know that a good friend of mine, Matt Furcus, can also account for this because it led to him literally staying at my house for like 2 weeks straight at one point.
Not again. Oh my god.
Yeah.
So growing up, he lived in a home that was a very old, if not plantation at one point. I mean, same era. But what we do know is that it was legitimately a home that was used during the Underground Railroad. There is quite literally a hidden room inside this house where there is a walk-in closet that if you would go into, there is a hidden door, a secret door that you could open that would lead into another hidden room, like full-size room, not just like a closet kind of thing, but another whole full-size room that literally was hidden away for that purpose. Now, I'll never forget. So again, this is one of those really old Southern homes where it's like there's the entryway is like a living room to the living room. Like it's this massive thing. So we were in his house. Nobody else was at his home. His parents were gone on vacation. His whole family was gone. We were sitting in this section right by the door, which is kind of like what would be the entryway. And everything was shut, all that good stuff. So this wasn't like a, wind thing that could have pulled, a door shut, anything like that. Everything was closed. Now, we were sitting downstairs. I remember we were watching Family Guy. And what I remember is that it was actually kind of loud. Like we were just kind of messing around, hanging out. Well, there was a panel upstairs in that room that I was mentioning. There was like a panel that you had to press that would open a latch that would kind of cause the door to pop out for you to actually see it. Like literally a hidden panel that you pressed, and then it would cause that thing to come up so you would move the door. So I remember we're sitting there and we heard that pop from that panel. And we both kind of looked at each other and kind of looked up. And as we're sitting there, we hear footsteps, literal footsteps, not like scampering, not squirrels, but footsteps walk out into the closet. And it is literally above our head, and then walk out into the main room. So there was a bedroom upstairs, and then again, another little entryway in between the bedroom and then what would be the stairs, almost like a little foyer area. And we hear footsteps walking across the foyer, and they stop at the very top of the stairs. But mind you, it's completely covered because there's like a ceiling over us. It was almost like a stairwell. Well, then, mind you, this is an old house too. Literally, I'll take it to the grave with me. We heard slow footsteps go down each and every step. A literal creak, not like just the building kind of being old, but I'm talking a literal step, 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 step down the whole entire flight of stairs until it got to the door.
Nope.
Right, the very edge, the very last step. And Matt and I literally are frozen, like goosebumps, hair sticking up, frozen, looking at the door. And I kid you not, we're both sitting there, Family Guy's blaring, and the door just goes and shuts.
Nope, gone. Gone.
We pop up,
gone,
dart out. Like the TV's still on. We dart out of the house, and I kid you not, Matt's parents probably came home like 2 days later, but he stayed at my house for like 2 weeks. He did not want to go back to the house because I mean, you ask anyone in that family, they had all heard something, all of them. I mean, there's another story, and I don't want to give any names out because I don't want to, but I will tell one more quick story. This is not my experience, by the way, but this is a house that you guys both know. The old McGuire Mansion just outside of Clarksville. As you guys know, Travis, if you don't know exactly which place I'm talking about,
I know where it's
at. Okay, perfect. So old plantation home, lots of history in this place. So I know an individual, and again, this is the way the story was told to me. So if I apologize if anything's wrong, but again, this was the story told to me. Back in the day, they used to do like daycare there, essentially, of sorts. A person that either lived in the home or they essentially, I don't know why, but there was a daycare there. Well, this person was a member of this daycare, and they were there and allegedly had this young individual went and talked to their mom about what a good day they had, that they had a new teacher. And she was like, okay, well, what's her name? And unfortunately, I don't remember the name, so I apologize. But she had said, oh, this Miss So-and-so. Miss So-and-so is there today. I really like her. The mom didn't think anything of it. Continued to send the daughter to daycare that week. And then finally, that last day when picking her up when picking up her kid, went inside, went to talk to the director, like the coordinator of the daycare, said, my kid really, really likes this new teacher you have. The coordinator said, who are you talking about? She's like, Miss So-and-so, the new daycare teacher you guys have. She's like, there's nobody here by that name that works here. So she was kind of like, well, that's kind of weird. So fast forward and does some research about the home and the history. And one of the individuals, I don't remember, and again, so I apologize because this is just what was told to me a while back. I don't remember if it was a housemaiden that worked there or an actual individual that lived there, had died in that house by the name of Miss So-and-so that was in that house during that time. Again, but that's part of the reason why this person refuses to revisit this place. There's other haunted places in that area, like Buffalo Cemetery is a big one. Heck, I live a mile away from the bloodiest prison this side of the Mississippi, the old Missouri State Penitentiary.
That thing, they give haunted tours of that all the time, don't they?
Yeah, Tony and I are going to get one planned here pretty soon.
Oh, you gotta take your record. That's the other thing I was going to add to that. If you do that, take a digital recorder with you. White noise, they say, is one of the easiest there was and I was going to tell you about this has probably been when I first moved here, maybe even longer than that. It was on Quincy News. This guy who for his hobby, strangest hobby ever, dude goes out with a digital recorder out to the cemeteries and just ask random tombstone questions and stuff like this. And this was on the news. And this guy just, there was one that said, please leave. I mean, it wasn't spooky. It just said, please leave me alone. Another one said, Staff Sergeant, blah, blah, blah. And he gave a serial number and everything. This was on, this wasn't like some kind of, it was just, I'm like, why would you,
This Staff Sergeant so-and-so, my serial number for my M4 is, Z1X4750. Please get it turned in. I'm stuck in purgatory until I turn it into the armors. That was part of the contract that I didn't see on my 6-year deal, and here I am today.
Well, maybe it's one of those things like I was talking earlier. You got to see it to believe it sometimes. Yeah. Maybe he just had to experience it, and now it's, I guess, a hobby, which is kind of weird, but whatever.
Yeah, I'll have to look at it. I don't know if it but I saw that and I was like, actual news story. But I'll post that. Yeah, good stuff, man.
Yeah, and again, I know a lot of that was super scattered, but I do encourage you, even if it's like not something that you're into, it'll totally refresh your brain and kind of introduce you to something that's just kind of rather interesting, because it is, when we look at like scientific studies of whether it's fitness or whether it's like economics, like, thousands upon thousands of hours were done researching this thing. And I've always found that very amusing. This wasn't just like a one-off, like, oh, we'll send a team in. This was years of people's lives dedicated to this. So, but yeah, I appreciate you guys for listening to me ramble. And
it was good stuff.
Again, to our listeners, I definitely appreciate you guys as well. I know in the coming weeks, we're going to have a really, really good guest on, and I don't want to give any too many spoilers. We are 2 weeks.
July the 5th. July the 5th.
Awesome.
July the 5th.
Yeah, so
confirmed.
We will come up with some good stuff to chat with you guys about next week. And, man, I definitely am excited as we kind of continue to roll on into the summer, all kinds of good things that we're going to have for you guys. The world's been a little bit calm and cool, and hopefully it can kind of stay that way for a little while, so we don't have anything that's too heartbreaking or news breaking to continue to talk about. But gentlemen, is there anything else you guys would like to add before we sign out tonight?
Thanks for listening. One more episode from this house, and then I am moving on to the great
whoop whoop
state of
the
Missouri.
Great Show Me State.
Yep.
And then Travis will be soon to follow.
Yeah, that's right. Come on, buddy.
We're working on it. It's a process.
Yeah, and once he's here, then maybe we could all rendezvous and find a good place to do a podcast studio.
Not the Zoom stuff. That'd be a lot better.
900 square foot shop. I can build a soundproof room.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay. Now we're
yeah. Thank you guys for listening to us, and see you guys next week. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Yes, and as always, make sure you guys check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, right here on Facebook and Podbean. We are the Voice of Reason podcast. This has been Travis Kirkendall, Andy Van Beber, and Sean Phillips. We are signing off. And again, thank you all so much for giving us a listen, and we can't wait to talk to you guys next week.